Terry Shield, the pole position winner for the 25-lap final of the Better Breaks Touring Car Series Round 4 here at Amaroo Park. He has alongside him, alongside his Mazda RX-7, the Commodore of Alan Grice. Going through the minds of both men must be the importance of making a really good start. Critical at most circuits, absolutely essential here at Amaroo Park. And Grice is certainly be trying hard. Right behind them, some big guns. We have Kevin Bartlett in car 9, and in car 31, that's the Chevrolet Camaro. In car 31, the BMW 635, Jim Richards. On the next row of the grid, Fred Gibson in the turbocharged Bluebird, Datsun, and Terry Finnegan in the Commodore there side by side. Gary Wilmington in the first of the Falcons. On the next row of the grid, he's in car number 8 with Peter McLeod in the Mazda RX-7. Behind the second of the Nissan turbocharged Bluebirds, George Fury, car 55, and car 14 is John English in the second Falcon in this race. Brian Callahan in car 47, who went so well in the is back there on position number 11 with John Duggan in a Mazda RX-7 alongside. Clive Benson Brown from Tasmania in a Commodore beside him. Murray Carter with him as well. A field of 25 cars as the timekeepers count off the last seconds. 10 seconds to go, 25 laps the distance. The start critical. The two men on the front row, Terry Shield and Alan Grice.
Racing now in round number 4 of the Better Breaks CRC Series, and getting away smartly on the inside is Terry Shield and the Eurocars Valvoline Mazda. He'll lead them up Pitcher Pave Hill for the first time.
There's a bump there. One of the Datsuns has been hit. Side on, he was knocked off the track, spinning away. I think it's George Fury who's gone to the bush. Just as well, he's a rally driver. He knows what to do when he's in there, but he was hit side on, pushed way off the field. A couple of cars involved. The leader, though, is Terry Shield, and quite a sensation at the start of this race.
Alan Grice into second place. Kevin Bartlett in the Camaro is in third as they head down to Mazda Corner for the first time, and rejoining in number 55, of course, is George Fury, who went off the track at the top of Itcher Pave the first time over.
And he'll be going back to the pits, I would say, Mike, and a worrying sort of start for him. He's out of the race, I would say, but it's Terry Shield in front. The field already sorting itself into single file with Grice, then Bartlett. The first three, a real tail wobble there from one of the Mazdas as they came round. They have 24 laps to go, and Finnegan already hanging the tail out there just in front of Jim Richards in the BMW, and Richards giving him a bad time going up on the outside, and he'll be making a big move there for fourth place, coming up wide there. A very difficult position for Richards. He's hanging on, but Finnegan will take the line through there. It's George Fury right behind him in the Nissan as well, and a battle all through the field here at the moment. Jill leads, Grice second. Then the Chevy Camaro of Kevin Bartlett, with a real battle going on here for 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th place. It's Finnegan just leading Richards, who's going to have another go. Richards anxious to get on with it, get away from him, coming in very hard, trying to find a tighter line through there. Can't quite do it as he goes after Finnegan. Freddie Gibson right on his tail and in the turbocharged Bluebird. And behind him, as brakes lock up, we have Peter McLeod in the Mazda RX-7 and Gary Wilmington in the first of the Falcons.
Freddie Gibson making a good move there on the inside of Jim Richards. Here they come down CRC straight away. There's Finnegan, followed by Gibson. Next back is Jim Richards, heading up to the top corner, and Peter McLeod in there in the Strongbow Mazda RX-7 as well, keeping the order tight as they go over the hill, and we pick them up shortly coming down the back straight. There's Terry Shield, who's threatened for so long to win one of the Better Breaks CRC Chemicals Amscar rounds. Today he got a good start, and he's off and running for broke at the front of the field. 22 out of contention after a spin up in the top corner is Gary Cook in the Commodore. Cook tries to engage gears. Meanwhile, the field starts to stretch away. There's Finnegan. Once again, Gibson not that far behind him. Jim Richards, the next one through, but our race leader is starting to tear right away from the rest of the field.
And Shield determined to prove a point that he's one of Australia's outstanding drivers. There are a number of really good men in Mazda these days. Alan Moffat, of course, the outstanding example. Barry Jones, who's not here today. Terry Shield, the third of the driver, and showing that he has class. He has the class to win here today. He has the class to be considered as an outright contender for the James Hardy 1000 at Bathurst on October the 3rd. Alan Grice, the man who lives on the circuit, knows it well. Doesn't want to see Shield get too far away, but in the back of Grice's mind is a nagging worry about his tyres, whether they'll last. In practice yesterday, he had some lamination. That means the tread was coming off the tyre, and he must be thinking, if I go too hard, too early, I'll wear the tyres out. So I'll go gently for a while, just keep them in sights, and if the tyres hang on, then I'll put my foot down over the last 10 laps. Kevin Bartlett in third place.
Then back to the dice between Finnegan and Fred Gibson in the Turbo Nissan. Heading down to Winfield Corner again. Here's the little Nissan sitting right behind Finnegan's Commodore. There's Bartlett going through, and then back to third place again, held by Finnegan in the Commodore, and right behind him is Fred Gibson, who is putting a ton of power and a ton of pressure on Finnegan. They're starting to pull away from Jim Richards, who is back in sixth place, and here comes Gibson on the inside, had the door shut on him that time, moves to the outside, drafts going up to the top of Bitchapave as they'll drop down into Dunlop Loop. Finnegan still sitting there, runs into the corner, just clips the top of the marker, and Gibson is glued to his tail as they work the back part of the circuit.
And Gibson having a tremendous drive here, reveling in the power of the turbo. But most of the work that Nissan have been doing to make the car handle better, as Finnegan maybe could do with a bit of help himself, wagging the tail fairly strongly there as he slowed down for this corner, driving desperately hard. And Freddie Gibson, who used to drive for Ford, now drives for Nissan, right behind him, comes up close. And just watch the power of this turbocharged car. Only a 4-cylinder 1.8 litres, but it's got the full turbo. It's a factory car. The first turbocharged car we've seen in action in the touring car events. The turbocharger is merely a supercharger driven by the car's own exhaust gases. It's the way to go in racing, and Formula One has proved, with so many of the teams switching to this very powerful means. And look at that Bluebird closing up. Fred has to brake a little early just to make sure he doesn't run into the tail of the car, trying to position him nicely so he can get onto an attacking position with Terry Finnegan, but Finnegan holding it nicely, really controlling the car well. And he himself has become one of the shining lights in touring car driving. But running in fourth place, the leading three still the same. But a great dice between these two.
This is certainly where the interest is. Terry Shield still continues to lead Alan Grice by about 50 metres and 75 back to Bartlett, 100 metres then back to Terry Finnegan. We have here leading Fred Gibson through the turn. Scrape right on the wall that time. That's how hard they're trying. Finnegan is using all of the racetrack to keep this little turbo Nissan at bay, and that includes scraping the guardrail on the front stretch. CRC straight away. Can you get any closer? He's bumper humping as they come up the straight, going to the top of Bitchapave Hill and dropping down into Dunlop Loop. Gibson is really competitive, and the Nissan Turbo starting to fire all its shots here today.
So it's privateer versus the factory, V8 versus turbocharged 4. Quite a confrontation going on. Jim Richards just behind in the black BMW, watching them just a bit out of striking distance, but close enough as you can see, maybe 12 lengths back, and he has a cluster of cars behind him as well. Oh, a bit of over-braking there. Finnegan braking hard, leaving it as late as he possibly can, under an enormous amount of pressure from Fred Gibson.
Down to Winfield Corner again. Finnegan, and let's not take anything away from Terry Finnegan. He's been driving the race of his life so far.
He's certainly hanging the tail out, just brushing that paintwork on the fence almost every lap. Driving very hard, driving a very controlled race. You can see the marks on the side of his car where he's been hit. Probably caught up that kerfuffle to put George Fury off the track at the top of the hill the very first lap. A number of cars were involved. There was a great recovery by Finnegan to keep going and to be up there in fourth place. You can see the gap back to the BMW of Jim Richards, and then to the other cars coming in behind there. Peter McLeod in the Strongbow Mazda RX-7. Trying to keep within touch of the leaders, but a furious pace being run by all the cars. Finnegan a little bit wider that time. He didn't brake quite as heavily as before, not wanting to lock up a brake as he did before, and therefore make the risk of flat spotting a tyre and causing damage to the car, or damage to his potential for performance. Finnegan, in fact, has opened up a little bit of a gap on Fred Gibson. So close have they been that he's now almost twice as far in front as he was last lap. Puts the tail right out into the Armco again,
leaving no room for error there whatsoever. And once again, it's Freddie Gibson who closes up. Now works to the outside, but the brakes come on, and now he's forced to sit back in here and nibble away, looking for an inside pass, perhaps the next lap around. Jim Richards has gained a little bit of ground in the last lap or so, but Finnegan at this stage starting to look even a little bit stronger as they come out of that corner, work away down towards Mazda Corner now. There's Richards going through in the JPS BMW. The next one to go through behind them was Peter McLeod in the Strongbow car. And in traffic, we have the race leader, Terry Shield, in the Eurocar's Valvoline Mazda RX-7, leading this race, the fourth round of the Better Break CRC Chemicals $70,000 Amscar Series from Amaroo Park.
He just passed Bob Holden, car 13, the Escort there. Bob, who won at Bathurst back in 1966, just turned 50. And he's telling me that, incredibly, his lap times in the past race meetings have progressed points by a tenth of a second each time. He's getting faster and faster. I said by the time you're 100, you'll win Bathurst again.
Age is no barrier. There's Fred Gibson, number 55. Doing a bit of wrestling there at the wheel as he came through Honda Corner.
That's George Fury in the car that was put off the track. He's been in the pits, I suspect. He's lost a lot of ground, but he's back in the race again. As much as anything else now, I think that he'll be trying to make this a development exercise to see how some of the revisions to the rear end they've been doing have counted. It's been pretty obvious, I think, Mike, that in fact Fred Gibson has been a little bit cautious about the handling of the car. Very, very powerful, there's no doubt, this turbocharged Bluebird. But he hasn't attempted to go past Finnegan on the corners. He's doing it under power, and he's been braking a little bit earlier. I think that they still have a little bit more work to do as far as the rear suspension. They reckon they'll have it right for Bathurst. But maybe today Fred's saying, well, I can't take the risk on the corner yet. I've got to try and get him under power, and it'll be power that we'll see Fred Gibson apply now as they come up CRC, up past the start-finish line towards Bridgeport. See where he can get him. He'll try and make a move if he can on the inside, but Finnegan closes that door nicely. Now, where will he go? Left, right? No, he'll brake earlier just to get it all under control and make sure he can get around the corner.
Into Dunlop Loop again. Terry Finnegan holding down 4th place in the race. Fred Gibson in the Nissan Turbo. Number 6 leads coming out of the corner. Back 1 spot. They've had a great scrap since the race started. Keep in mind our race leader Terry Shield, who is drawing away from second place Alan Grice at the moment, picked up the outright touring car record in an earlier heat here today, and that record has been attacked by many of Australia's leading drivers, including Alan Moffat, who came up with a clean sweep at the last meeting here at Amaroo Park. So this little RX-7 Mazda has gone through a lot of development here during the course of the CRC Better Break Series, and looking very good and very solid and very tidy out there today is Terry Shield.
Yes, the record was held for a couple of years by Bob Morris at 54 seconds exactly. Shield went round in the earlier heat of 53.9. And as Mike Raymond was saying, many people had a go at Bob Morris's record, including people of the calibre of Alan Moffat in a similar car to this, Peter Brock, Dick Johnson. But this is the man who broke the record. This is the new record holder. And this man, Terry Shield, is our race leader as they cover 12 laps of this 25-lap final for the Better Breaks Touring Car Series at Amaroo Park.
Well, I suspect the main question to be answered with this particular scrap is whether or not Alan Grice can haul in Terry Shield. It wouldn't appear to be that way at the moment. Or whether Terry Finnegan and Fred Gibson can put a lot of pressure on Kevin Bartlett, who is running in 3rd place, probably 40 or 50 metres ahead of them on the track at the moment.
In terms of points for the overall series, Alan Grice is the best placed of the drivers taking part. The leader of the series is Colin Bond, who's not taking part today, and he gained his points at the wheel of Kevin Bartlett's car, the car we're about to see, and that'll show you the gap between 2nd and 3rd. But driving this car now in the hands of Kevin Bartlett, it was Colin Bond who has amassed most points in the series, 46. But Alan Grice has 44, and then the other drivers with high points, Barry Jones, Peter Brock and so on, aren't in the race today. So Grice, if he can just hold on to 2nd spot, is looking good for the whole overall race series.
There's Bartlett, still presently placed 3rd in the 9 Camaro, going down to Winfield Corner again and along towards Wonderlick Windows Corner. There's Terry Finnegan, and of course ever-present Fred Gibson in the Nissan Turbo.
So they're not far behind Kevin Bartlett. We were talking to Kevin a little earlier on as he just crossed the start-finish line. He's now going picture pave, just whipped out of our camera then, and we'll next pick him up as we come over the top of Dunlop. But Kevin Bartlett is going to take 200 pounds weight out of this car for Bathurst. So imagine how it'll go then with that sort of load. Not only will it give him the extra equivalent of an extra 30 horsepower or so, as he was saying, but it will improve braking, it will improve handling, it will improve the whole full complex performance characteristic of this car. And this is a car that could well win Bathurst this year. He may not win here today, but he's got a lot more work to do on the car, and he should be quite sensational at Bathurst, bearing in mind how quickly he's gone in past years.
Exactly. He was, of course, the man that made everyone stand back and just gasp last year in the rain and getting pole position for the James Hardy 1000. And Kevin just hasn't allowed the 1982 season to get away from him. He's been to the States, he's done a lot of development work, and they'll start their weight cutting exercise in the next couple of weeks, leading up to the CRC race, of course the Sandown curtain raiser, and the big one, the James Hardy 1000.
George Fury, who went off the track on the very first lap up on this point when he was hit and pushed off into the bush, has recovered. He hasn't gone into the pits. He just circulated slowly for a lap or so to make sure the car was sound. Decided it was now up into 11th place. which is a remarkable performance.
We've been following Kevin Bartlett, presently in third place. The race leader, of course, is still Terry Shield in the Eurocar's Valvoline Mazda. There's Bartlett going through. Normally the car is driven at Amaroo Park in the Better Break CRC Chemical Series by Colin Bond. Traffic congestion and problems for the race leader, Terry Shield, as he moves in behind George Fury here. Gary Cook, Brian Callahan trying to find a way past them. Fortunately, at this stage, he's got a big lead build-up over second place Alan Grice, now coming into view at the top of the hill.
It's a fairly desperate situation for him because he's caught up with drivers who are engaged in their own particular battle, won't recognise him as the leader. He's just another Mazda, and there's a Mazda in that group anyhow. And they're not going to let him by. He's got George Fury, who's trying desperately to get by, Brian Callahan, and he's going to find it very, very hard to get by. And there he goes in a darter there. Callahan will say, "Oops, sorry, I didn't know it was you." But that does give Alan Grice a chance to catch up. But then, of course, Grice has to pass them as well. That's George Fury just in front, who's recovered so well. He's running in 11th place. You can see the dent on the side of the car where he got T-boned and spun off into the bushes. Fury recovering well. Not the first time he's been to the bush, was the Australian Rally Champion, so he got out more quickly than most and certainly under more control than most. But he's about to be overtaken, I would think, by Terry Shield. We might get a fair indication of the performance difference between the peripheral ported Mazda and the turbocharged Bluebird. Well, as soon as George saw who it was, he let him go anyhow. So Shield now through, up now, just going to try and pass the Commodore in front to get through the last of this group.
It looks like it could be Clive Benson-Brown.
His car number 11, that's right, yes, the curly-haired Tasmanian, who is fairly new on the scene, but creating a very good impression, both with his enthusiasm and the way his driving has improved. He and Gary Rogers did so well at Bathurst last year, still eliminated, along with 5 other drivers in that crash that put an end to the whole race.
There's Terry Shield starting to increase that lead again. Alan Grice is probably 100 metres back behind him with 2 cars still separating. These are the 2, George Fury and Clive Benson-Brown at number 11. The next car you'll see is Grice starting to come into the picture. Still placed in second. Bartlett is third. Finnegan fourth. And Fred Gibson is fifth. We're into the second half of this 25-lap fourth round of the Better Break CRC Chemicals $70,000 Amscar Series here at Amaroo Park. And the highlight, of course, of the season will be the next meeting at Amaroo Park, which sees the running of the CRC 300. And that hopefully will have all of Australia's leading touring car drivers, including Alan Moffat, all of them back for that big one. And perhaps the V8 drivers can sort out their tyre and wheel size problems and be back to race the Mazdas.
And the battle for fourth place is just as desperate as ever. We have the Terry Finnegan Commodore and Fred Gibson's Nissan side by side at the moment as they come down towards this corner. Whoops, you see a little bit of hard cornering there. The one going so wide was Barry Lawrence in the Commodore, who has Brian Callahan behind him. Alan Grice in second spot has George Fury to get by. So he's going through the sorts of problems that we saw the leader go through just a while ago. There's Grice now passing. They're side by side. The other pair going through Winfield. Oh, they're spun in Winfield. There's a spin, and it's Fred Gibson as he tried to pass on the inside of Finnegan. He spun the car. He spun it deliberately. It was that or lose it altogether and have a crash. And maybe he stalled it. Maybe we'll see him in the sort of situation where we've seen René Arnoux in the Renault Formula One Grand Prix turbocharged car, stalls it and can't restart it. And a couple of marshals say, "We're getting you out of there, boy, because that's just too dangerous." But Freddie trying to crank the car back into life. It's a bit reluctant to go, head bowed down as he tries to get it running. You see shaking there, a bit of black smoke. He's got something firing there. He's trying to get it back on the wicket. Doesn't want to fire cleanly and evenly. He's had a bit of an upset. Now he's got it going. Now he puts the power down. He looks over his shoulder. Is there any traffic coming? When he hits the bitumen, all hell will break loose. And away he goes. And Fred Gibson, winner of Bathurst many years ago, a highly experienced driver, will be very upset over that. He was in a position to challenge the fourth. We've had a spin out way up on top of the circuit coming through Mazda, a car off towards the bank. Car number 40, it is Peter McLeod. There he is, you can see the flames from the exhaust. The car is not on fire, it's the engine firing at the back as he tried to get it running. But the boot is up, or rather the back window in the particular construction of the Mazda RX-7, but he may not be allowed to race on like that. And Peter McLeod, who was running very well, high up, he was in fact up in the in 7th place. He's dropped back quite a few, and the wind pressure drops the door and closes it for you. That shows you how the aerodynamics work.
There's Gary Cook looking for an inside way on the Strongbow RX-7. But McLeod has managed to get the car firing again. Meanwhile, out in front and increasing his lead, here's, of course, Terry Shield, who now moves in behind Cook And we'll put one more lap on Cook on the inside as they head up Itchapave Hill. Cook moving to the left in the Citizen car, and that allows Shield to go through and retain his lead.
Peter McLeod, who we saw just go up into the sand, just in front of Terry Shield now. McLeod's car still inclined to spit a lot of flame from the back there. I'm not so sure whether he has a peripheral port at Mazda. He was running it with the ordinary engine for some time, and I suspect he may have the same, not to the same attitude. Yes, he's running an ordinary. He's gone to peripheral port. Well, maybe he preferred it in an ordinary fashion. He hasn't had too good a run here today, but Peter McLeod is one of the really good Mazda drivers, and I'm sure that we'll be looking for him for a good performance also at Bathurst on October the 3rd. But Terry Shield doing it all right at the moment. He's threaded his way through the traffic on a couple of occasions now, showing a lot of maturity as well as speed. And he's well and truly clear at the moment of Alan Grice, running in second spot. The margin hasn't really opened up anymore, but there's a fairly comfortable barrier between the two cars. And you'd have to say things are looking good, not just for Mazda in this race, but also their prospects at Bathurst, where you see people like Barry Jones and Alan Moffat returning for that race. It really does add a new dimension to the challenge. For years, Bathurst has been highlighted by the challenge between Holden and Ford. Well, this year Mazda is certainly well and truly up there. And the way the Nissan Bluebird turbos have been going, I reckon they could also stand a fair chance of getting right up among some of these faster and maybe more fancy cars. So we're in for a great race. We can't, of course, forget the fact that we'll have the revitalised Chevrolet Camaros running there. We'll have Alan Jones and Bobby Morris running in the new Falcon XEs. Dick Johnson will be there, of course, defending the crown that he won last year. It should be a great race.
Say nothing of the fact of the updated Commodore that we will see prior to Bathurst, that a lot of drivers, including Peter Brock, have a few hopes pinned on.
Yes, I've seen the car down Melbourne. I've driven the prototype of it. It is sensational.
We won't go into that anymore, but keep in mind the days of the Commodore and Peter Brock. Quite a few others are far from over. 42 around sideways.
John Duggan, it is, who's got into the dirt. Maybe not in two minds about whether he likes the extensions to the circuit. He's glad the bank's not there, but he would have lost a few seconds in the loose gravel. He got out all right. He worried about his tyres a bit. You can see the dust still spattering from the back. And John Duggan now back underway again. The track must have a lot of rubber laid down and quite a bit of oil. A few drivers, reliable, safe drivers like John Duggan, have been visiting the outside too much to suggest that there's not something wrong with the track. Whoops, and there's Clive Benson Brown. He's just having a rest. He's just pulling into, been discoing a bit too much. Maybe it's a flat tyre at the back. It looks a bit flat there. So there's Clive Benson Brown out of the race. He's either bogged or he's got a flat tyre. He may just be pulled up with some other problem. He is certainly out of the race. The brake's smoking a little bit. Bad luck for the Tasmanian, who is out of the race. In the meantime, our leader has now covered 23 laps. He has 2 laps to go in this 25-lap race, the Better Brakes Touring Car Series Round 4 final today.
There's Shield working down towards Mazda corner. Alan Grice, still running in second place, is perhaps about 50 metres back behind. Grice has done an excellent job. In fact, I think Grice may have made up some ground in the last couple of laps. Shield, meanwhile, though, is starting to go in between some of these slower cars. Moves up behind another group, a signal to the outside. Grice is the next car that comes into view as Shield will come on to the finishing straight now to acknowledge the signal. 1 lap remaining for Terry Shield, looking good to pick up a round win, the 4th round win in the Better Brakes CRC $70,000 Amscar Series.
Well, Shield got a good start and he got away first. Oh, there's a spin there, you can see. Duggan doing it twice now, going off. There must be oil up there because we did hear before there was oil at the top of the circuit. Duggan had a spectacular lose there. He's out of contention a long way back in the race, but going very hard. A big spin. Finnegan avoided it. The leader goes round. He has half a lap to go. Looking very cool does Terry Finnegan as he comes down with just 2 more corners to go to take the checkered flag to win here at Amaroo Park today. There's a 5-second gap back to Alan Grice in the Commodore in second spot. Kevin Bartlett running third in the Camaro. And Duggan getting the car back into action again after that second spin. Alan Grice coming towards the last corner. The checkered flag out for the winner of today's race. Terry Shield led from start to finish. Fastest in practice. First off the line. Led all the way for 25 laps. Alan Grice 5 seconds back in second spot. Kevin Bartlett will come across the line third place, but a fairly distant third now as he dropped back in the closing laps of the race. Just coming now down through Wonderlick Corner. Those are the leading 3. It's Shield, Grice and Bartlett. The way they started from practice is the way they finish the race.